All right, so welcome. This is the Canvas Beyond the Basics training. And if you were just in the basics training, again, I'm going to try to, maybe flesh out in more detail some of those items that may have kind of whooshed by you, if you have any of those. This training is more customized to you. So I certainly have some things that I know typically are items that folks want to know a little bit more about, but I'd like to start by giving you an opportunity to say, all right, I've been trying to do this in Canvas for so long and I just can't figure it out, or I just was in the basics training and I missed a really important piece and I'd like to be able to see that again. So I'm going to kind of open it up to that option right off the bat. Is there anybody that has something very specific that they're hoping to get some insights about? Anything that in particular you're trying to do? Go ahead.
Pages.
Okay.
I've seen a lot of the videos on it. It seems important, but
you're not quite wrapping your head around
how to organize it.
What it is. Okay. So one of the best ways to maybe show you pages is I'm going to show you a fully operational course that I just ran this past summer, and I make heavy use of Pages. Pages is one of those sort of hidden gems in Canvas. If you don't know what they are, once you see what they can do, it really opens up a lot of ideas about how to do creative setups in your course. So one course that I use Pages in extensively is my Intro to Object-Oriented Programming course. All right, now what's nice about this course is that I show a number of different features. So in this Canvas setup, I have my home page as a page. So what a page is essentially custom content that you build directly into Canvas. All right, so when you think of a web page, all right, that's a content element in an overall website. So if you think of your Canvas course as a website, a page is just simply a web page, a piece of content. All right, it's not a Word document, it's not a PDF. Those are still documents that you can provide to your students, but they themselves are not what you would call a page. All right, so a page allows you to say, okay, I want to have, in my course, what I wanted was to be able to, really communicate to students what are the important parts of this Canvas course that they need to, always be focused on. All right, I want them to have a quick way to see the syllabus. Now, even though the syllabus is one of your main nav bars, again, this allows me to say the syllabus is important and you need to go make sure you read that, number one. Course modules is where I have all your assignments and requirements laid out in a nice structure. Discussions are where you can go to find a particular forum that I always use, the help forum. I teach in the computer programming courses, so when I have a student needing tech support of some kind, rather than having them always emailing me, the help forum I use to allow students to help each other if I'm not available to answer a question. All right, so the main idea here is that you think about what's important to you in your course. How do you want to communicate those priorities? And what you can do is make a page that lays that right out. Now mine's pretty boring, I don't have images and so forth, but if you have YouTube videos, if you have artwork of some kind or imagery of some kind, if you want to put in a little audio clip even, you can put anything into a page that you like and make it a truly rich kind of experience. So that's really, there's any number of different ways you can do this. Now in this course uses an OER, Open Education Resource, which is essentially a free online textbook through MIT. We use App Inventor, which is a free web-based tool So the other thing that this allows me to do is to link to those very important resources, because they're not going to go to the bookstore and buy a book. They're going to be on, they need to get all of their resources either through Canvas, which I've provided all of the documents for them to, all their reading is right here. All right, so let me scroll down this page a little bit. So the entire textbook is right here. All right, so the textbook is broken into individual PDFs by chapter. So what I did ahead of time to get these links in place was I made sure I had all the PDFs uploaded into files. As I mentioned, that's a really important time saver. You know, get all your files organized, get them uploaded ahead of time, and then it's just a matter of just building these links and just clicking on each individual PDF to bring it into the page. All right, so this, again, is my home page. So this was created in the Pages area. So I have lots of pages. All right, and once you create a home page, when you go to the Pages area, that home page will auto launch in the browser. So this is not going to show you, which I don't know how useful it is. I don't know why they decided that was kind of an important way to do this, but I didn't design Canvas, so can't answer that question. But so the important thing is if you create a bunch of pages, you have to remember that they are all there, but you have to hit this View All Pages button at the top. It's not intuitive necessarily, but that's the important step, to be able to see all your pages and to be able to add a page, to create a page from scratch. All right, so once you view all pages, so I use pages for a lot of different things. All right, one is that I will, so when I do my courses, whether they're a hybrid course or an online course, I usually have some sort of lecture recording. So if it's one of my live courses, I stream my live lectures through Zoom, which is what we're using right now to capture this session. We're using Zoom, which is a awesome resource, and if anybody wants information about it, talk to Lee or I and we'll go over it. But so I'll use a page to make an individual lecture recording available. When I have time and can get to that step in the process, that's also where I'll build transcripts of, again, one of the big accessibility initiatives with distance learning is to, if you do video recordings, you should have a transcript available of that video session. And there are easy ways to do it. I don't have some of those resources to do it easily right now, so that's a goal of mine. But that's where a page would really come in handy. You have your video and then your transcript all in that one content piece. So is there anyone here doing transcripts, video lectures with transcripts? Anybody familiar with that process? All right, it's kind of an advanced thing, and again, like I said, I don't have all of the tools on hand to really do a demo of that just now, but that is something that you may see coming up. If you do want to do video integration into your distance learning courses, again, that's going to be an important feature. Also, captioning on videos, that's another whole piece to it, so be on the lookout for some of those things to come around. But you can see I have, again, a page for each of those individual elements. All right, so you can see that what the home page, or what can be a home page, has the front page indicator right here. So this is the title of my home page. I've made it a front page simply by choosing it from this little option button right here. So you can say, I no longer wish this to be my home page. You can remove it. You can make something else your home page, all right, at any time. All right, so this is easy. So home pages can link to anything in your course. That's another beautiful thing about them. So you can create a summary page, and you can swap out a page. So what some instructors will do is they will make, you know, kind of to go along with modules. All right, if you saw the modules piece in the earlier session or at a previous session, all right, what I have seen some instructors use pages to do is to make a new homepage each week. All right, so to go along with the modules, what you might want to do is, okay, we're in week 1. You know, give them a, you know, rah-rah statement, encouragement, you know, write up all kinds of incentives, or just be very specific about what students should be focused on for that week. And it gives you a way to truly, you know, communicate well what the expectations are for that week, what are the things that they need to make sure they do. If you have prerequisites that students need to meet to go from one assignment to the next, a page is a great way to explain that out. All right, so what you could do is make a week 1 page, put all the links to all the various assignments that are needed for that week, and then have that match up with you know, what is in the modules area as well. So you wouldn't necessarily replace the modules, but it would just give you another way to communicate what's going on. So you make a page for that week, turn it into the front page, and there you go. That's a easy way to, if you're finding that your students are getting lost as to where they're supposed to go and what they're supposed to do, you know, this could be a way around that. Okay. So making a page is a very simple thing. When you have a page created, or actually let me go back to the pages area. So if I want to build a new page, I have to be in the view all pages, all right? And then you have this add page button right here. So Lee went over this earlier, but again, adding a page is simply a matter of giving it a title, typing in whatever, putting in whatever content you wish, and then going from there. All right. So does anybody have any other more detailed questions related to pages that they'd like to ask about? Any other pieces on this side of the house?
When you drag a file in, you're dragging the link, right? So
Yeah,
click on it.
right.
You're not showing the whole document.
Right, and you're not even really dragging. So for example, if you're just literally clicking, right? So this.
Something like our PowerPoints for lectures, we just click on it and there's the link. It doesn't show up in that box.
Right, so exactly. So I have, my files are mostly PDFs. Or what I'll do is, for this, I have, again, this course is all about building little apps for Android phones. So I will very often create a starter project, so it has pieces of the app built ahead of time, and then I will make a package of that is specific to what we're using, which is App Inventor. And because it's just a simple file, if I want students to easily be able to download that file, I just find it in my files area. I do nothing more. I mean, now what you want to watch is watch where your cursor is. Right, so if you want to do very fine-tuned placement of things, if I have some text that's already in here, for example, I'm just going to do a quick copy and paste of some existing text here. So I have some copy. All right, so let's say I have some copy. I've got this going along, and oh, I'm just kind of, I'm not paying attention to where my cursor is. You can see that the cursor is right here. Let's say, oh, okay, I want to make sure they have this starter note taker app right here. I click on it here. Where's it going to go? Wherever my cursor is. All right. So it's not a drag and drop kind of thing. It is oriented to the cursor. So you plan ahead. All right, where you want this link to go. Now it's easy to get rid of this. It's very easy. You just highlight it and delete it. It is literally only a link. You're not actually putting the physical file in there in any way, shape, or form. Yeah, it would. Now, really what this is, and I think Lee mentioned this, really what you're building is a web page. Because if you are familiar with how web pages are built, there is a special coding language behind all this, HTML. So those of you who may want to kind of dip your toes in the water of learning how to build a web page, this is a great opportunity because, again, you have the HTML editor option. What you're in right now is the rich content editor, right, which works just like a word processor. All right, you have all your word processor tools here, but if you want to do your own special coding and you know a little bit of HTML, you can go into that mode and you can see what the HTML looks like. All right, so you can now kind of see how is this being structured in some way, shape, or form. So all these little tags right here, this is code. This is HTML code. So this says that this is a paragraph, and this is emphasized as strong text, etc. Then you'll see these little weird things in here, which, you know, you don't really need to know what they are just now, but, you know, there are some things that you can just clean up. So if you know some HTML, there are some really cool things that you can do in here to embed even more rich content if you understand how that works. All right, but you don't have to know this. This is just a, you know, kind of side note on that whole business. All right. Okay. All right. So anybody else? Any other specific topics before I throw some ideas out at you?
Can you show the Turnitin again thing?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yep. Absolutely. So if you're going to be using Turnitin, again, Turnitin is a third-party resource, remember. So it is not built directly into Canvas, although the stuff that is in Canvas is available to that third-party resource. So what is happening when students turn in their work, you can have those assets, I'll call them, compared to many different types of resources that are out there. All right. How many people have used Turnitin in some other context? All right. So I think we had it with Blackboard, I believe. I never used it when it was, but I don't think it worked. Yeah, there was something flaky about it, and I never ended up really using it. But from what I've seen, it does it's well integrated into Canvas. So I do plan to use it more. So I'm still kind of new to using it myself, but I have, you know, played with it enough that I think I can give you some good. So it's at the assignment creation point that you decide that you're going to use Turnitin. So you can use Turnitin for one assignment and not for another. You know, it's totally assignment based. All right, so if I go into assignments, all right, and here's, now also one thing to know, when you're in some of these larger, as you may have seen, especially if you've imported from Blackboard into Canvas, you can see some really long sections and all kinds of extra junk that comes in with Blackboard. So notice that these different categories, like in here, the assignment groups, you can collapse these down just to make it easier for you to view certain things. And then you can also delete an entire, so if you're doing cleanup work, this is just kind of a side note before we go into Turnitin. If you're in needing to do cleanup mode with Blackboard, just realize that if you've got a lot of extra junk in your assignments area or modules, you can delete an entire section and its contents with just a simple delete right here. All right, so that may speed up some cleanup efforts that you may be doing with a Blackboard import. All right, so let's say I'm going to create a new group here. Papers. So most of the time, you're going to probably use Turnitin with things like research papers or smaller paper assignments, but you can use Turnitin with almost anything. So if you're a programming instructor, you can actually have it compare programming code with what might be out there in the wild, which is helpful for the programmer types out there. I'm going to put 0%. Now also, again, just as a side note, you can have a category of assignments that are 0% of their total. So those of you wanting to do, for example, group discussions, and you want to make a special category for that, you can, even though it makes you have to do a graded discussion to get that group feature, just put those in a category where it's 0% of the total, and that's an easy way to take care of that issue. All right, if you don't want it to factor into their grade. All right, so I'm going to add an assignment. Now, in here, you can add a new assignment directly into an assignment category. Right? I don't know if Lee showed that, but that's something that people get kind of confused about. So this add button, again, can be used to add something that already exists, or you can build something from scratch right here as well. So let's go to, again, so you can look at any different kind of element. So add a particular kind, a discussion assignment quiz, or make it not graded. You know, those are all the things. Again, go to the more options. And this is where you're going to be able to get to the Turnitin settings. So you need to create the assignment first, and then again, go to more options. So again, if you didn't see that, let me do that one more time. Cancel out in here. All right. So again, it's add right here. Again, this is only going to give you very basic, a basic shell of an assignment. So to get the nitty-gritty details, you need to, I always just go straight to more options. It's just easier that way. And then fill in all the details. So you have an assignment name, research, paper 1, whatever description you want to give, blah, blah, blah. And then points, etc. And go in this way. All right, and so if you do want to use Turnitin, the important piece is that it has to be an online submission type, because a student has to do one of two things. You can allow a student to use the text entry feature, which I don't think Lee really talked about that in the last one. So, and you can give them choices. They can only choose one submission type, but you can give them, you know, as many of these options as you prefer. So let's say you want to give the student the ability to just simply copy and paste their research paper into the assignment submission. You can do that. Again, when the student does their submission, they're going to get an editor just like you've been seeing on all these different pages. All right, so if you give them text entry, they're going to get one of those text editors. All right, so if it's just a short paper, maybe it's a one-page, you know, mini essay kind of thing, that might be more convenient. You know, so then that way a student could use Pages or whatever, you know, editor they prefer. If they don't have Word or they don't like Word or whatever, they just want to type in Notepad or something, you know, which is weird, but whatever. You know, the text entry gives them the ability to copy and paste into a text editor just like you've seen, right? So that's an option. You could do a website URL if you allow students to submit their work from Google Docs, right? So a Google Doc URL could be totally fine in your world. You know, so this would be the way you would do it. So a student would need to make sure they share the document on Google Docs with you. You would have to be able to obviously see the document through a web interface as opposed to through Canvas, all right? Or there may be a way that Canvas, I haven't tested this fully, but you may still be able to see the Google Doc within the Canvas area as well. But, you know, that's just something to think about. And then the file uploads. All right, with all three of these, now media recordings is if you want video or audio, so I'm not even going to go in that direction for this example. All right, so you can so when the students go to this assignment, they're going to see when they click the submit or do a submission, they're going to be presented with a little area that has a tab for each one of these options. So they get to pick, but they can only use one option. Right, they can't do all three. All right, and again, you've already seen does everybody understand the restrict file uploads feature? Okay, if you want, I can show you that again. All right, so now we're finally at the Turnitin piece, the plagiarism review. All right, so if you just want to trust them and say, yeah, whatever, I trust you, you do that, did it your own work, great, but Turnitin now will give you, again, a number of options for being able to customize how their submission compares to what's out there. So the store submissions in is just essentially what you're essentially taking with this option. The standard is to take each student's assignment and put it into a central repository. Now, if there's some issue with that, if you need to, for whatever reason, just be able to take a student's paper and compare it to other things, but you don't want it to be stored, maybe there's some privacy things. Again, in the medical field, there may be, regulations for being able to store certain kinds of documents in a central repository like this. So if you have some kind of rule or regulation that would be, in conflict by storing a student's paper somewhere, then that's why you have this option available. But by default, a student's paper is going to be stored so that it can be a source of comparison to other students' paper. That's the whole point, is that when your student submits something, you want to make sure that some other student isn't submitting that same thing. And again, the students will, if, again, two people were working on the same paper, the first person who turns it in may not be the original author either. So, there's any number of different fun situations you can get into. Those are fun conversations to have with students, by the way. And I've had them. All right, but yeah, so chances are you're going to want to leave it to standard paper repository. Right now it becomes an asset for future comparisons. All right, so when you compare when the submission is being compared, student repository is the first option. All right, so that means if somebody else in the class has already submitted their paper, again, this is going to make this new paper, compared to a previous submitted paper. Website content, so Turnitin, this is where the third-party tool comes in, because Turnitin itself has indexed, again, using things through Google and all the major search engines, Wikipedia, all the common places where people might, copy, plagiarize information or details. So this is going to compare the paper against all of that as best it can. It does a pretty good job, I have to say. I've done a quick test on this, and I just copied a couple of different paragraphs from different Wikipedia pages, and it nailed it. So it's pretty accurate. And then the common electronic periodicals, journals, publications. So these would be not necessarily, it's still web content, but it's more specialized content that is not just open to the general public. So any of those library maintained resources, so all of those e-journals and e-books and so forth that you have to have a login privilege to get to. This is not just open to the world kind of stuff. You have to have an actual account to get into it. So Turnitin also ties into those specific periodicals and so forth. All right. So does everybody understand all the comparison options that are here? Okay. All right. So the Similarity Report. Here, what you could do is, so for example, one of a fairly sane option would be to check this box. Because if you're making your students use a very specific citing strategy, then of course their citations are going to be, if they did it right, they're going to be, if they did it wrong, then it's not that's a different problem. So if their citations are absolutely correct, that's going to be a flag, because that's going to match with possibly a citation that's in the source that they pulled from. Okay, so, or again, that's going to be the same with some other students. If you have every student doing their citations exactly right, then again, there's a potential match there that's really unfair to flag as plagiarism, right? Exclude quoted materials, all right, which would, if you are, and so you could, kind of check this or uncheck this as you know, I'm kind of on the fence about which way to go with this one, because, you know, you may want to see just how much quoted material. If most of their paper is like, oh, I put it in quotes, so it's okay, it's not plagiarism, right? But more than 50% of their paper is quoted material, then you want to see that. You want to, you know, so if you uncheck that, you know, then you're not going to, you may not get that full sense of what's going on there. And then exclude small sources. I'm not really sure what that means. I've never really applied that piece before. And again, I am more in the programming realm, so you know, this wouldn't necessarily be something that I would probably, you know, pick up on necessarily. And then finally, if you are pretty sure that this is the standard set of settings that you want for any assignment that you do, you can just save as the default setting. Use this checkbox to say, all right, this is what I want to do each time. So when this assignment saves, it also will remember these settings for future assignments that you create, which is kind of helpful, okay? And then the Originality Report, again, this gives you a way to provide a way to communicate with your students exactly how original their report seems to be given the Turnitin algorithms. All right, so if you want your students to have a way to redeem themselves, or let's say you just want them to experiment with Turnitin, just so they can see exactly what's going on, then giving them immediate access to what the report is saying is really helpful. So if you have a policy where you allow students to submit an assignment multiple times, which by the way, Canvas will not block a student from multiple submissions. You can choose which submission they've made to be the one that you actually grade, all right? But students can technically do as many submissions as they want to do, all right? So if you want to give them the ability to see, all right, when I wrote this paper, I thought I was doing a pretty good job on reining in on the plagiarism side of things, but then they submit it and see, oh, more than 40% of your page is marked as, you know, somebody else's stuff, then it gives them an opportunity to say, okay, and it'll show in the report exactly where the content matches up. So, and actually, I'll do a quick little, if we have time, I'll do a quick little demo where I do just what I did before, just like literally copy and paste from Wikipedia or wherever, or a Newsweek article or something. All right, so this will give them the report where they can see exactly where, you know, it's flagging for content. Now, if it's, let's say you're doing a timed assessment of some kind. Like, let's say you want them to do an essay in, you know, maybe you're teaching a live class, but you're using Canvas to have people turn in just a simple writing prompt exercise while they're in class, if you happen to be in a computer lab and you can have students do this. And it's a timed assessment or whatever, and you want to make sure that you capture exactly what students provided during that session, but you want the opportunity to see exactly what's going on with the student. So the Originality Report might be something that you let the students see after you've done the grading. So you can get a preview of what they've submitted, get kind of a sense, and then maybe you need to base the grade on what they submitted in that limited time frame. All right, so it may be appropriate to say, all right, I'm not going to give you the immediate report. I'm going to grade this first, and then I will kind of drive the train on how I handle any signs of plagiarism. Or it could be that, you know, you just want to make sure students are just being honest with themselves, but, you know, you want to see their level of honesty in some way, shape, or form, so they don't see the originality report immediately. Maybe it's after the due date, or they never see it, which I don't know. I think that is probably a little harsh not to ever let them. I mean, if they're going to be called out on plagiarism, they should see why that is. But that's my personal opinion, and you may differ in that. All right, so let me see if I can do a quick little demo of this. So I'm going to just, all right, so so that's the big thing. Were there any other questions about Turnitin other than that? Did that kind of hit some things? Yes.
I just want to clarify.
Yes.
So this has to be done when you create the assignment. Right?
Exactly.
You can't go back in and edit it after.
Well, you could. You actually could. Yeah. But what you want to do is make sure that that's in place before the students are actually going to do submissions.
Right.
Yeah. So you don't want to, so if you create the assignment, it's kind of, you could if you see that a few submissions come in and it's like, oh, I just didn't even turn it in on, but oh my goodness, I just read this article in Wall Street Journal this morning and they just put it in their paper. If you start to see that kind of like, all right, there really is some need for plagiarism review, you could turn it on after the fact, but there may be submissions that don't have that reporting. So it's in your best interest to kind of figure out that this is what you want for the assignment as you're creating. But it is at the point, it's in the creation phase and edit phase that this comes in. Okay? You're welcome. All right, so I'm going to save this. And, well, actually, I've got this going in. I'm going to cancel out of this one real quick. All right, and actually this might eat up more time trying to do a live demonstration. So do people feel like they could play with that okay and get a sense of it? All right, because I don't want to eat up too much time just doing the actual, because it might take a little while for it to actually generate the report. But I do encourage you to play with it. It's really interesting. It really is. And the Originality Report, as Lee mentioned, will show up so if you go in as a test student, make a totally blatantly plagiarized document. Submit it as a test student, and then you will see the Originality Report in the grade view of the test student. All right, that's where you're going to be able to find it. Okay. All right. Yes.
Just real quick. So does the college require that we use Turnitin, or is it
the college as a whole does not require it, but you may want to check with your department head because it may be, like, for example, the English department, I think, is pretty solidly on board with using Turnitin. So even there, they may not say you have to use it for everything, but there may be specific, like in college comp, you may have to have your final paper put through Turnitin, just as it's probably a really good idea.
We use it for all of our.
Yeah, I think, but it's more of a department decision as opposed to the college as a whole. Because there are some departments where it may not be as useful as others. But it really is very simple to do,
Yes.
and it's eye-opening, I will tell you. Yes?
I was just wondering on the announcements.
Yes.
Is it like Blackboard where the old ones disappear, or are they always
They're
there?
always there. And depending on how you've set up your homepage, you can have your announcements viewed on the homepage, and that's where you can limit it to the most recent announcements.
Okay.
So if you don't want to have every announcement, absolutely, yep. So let me clean up a little mess here because that doesn't need to be there anymore. Okay, so announcement, yeah, so if you go to the announcements, and you can see this is why I want to show you a course that's already finished. All right, so there's quite a few announcements in here. So every announcement will be visible. Now, you can remove announcements if you want. All right, so if something's truly old and you just want to get rid of it, and it's really not serving any purpose anymore, that's one option. All right, just use this little, again, always watch for these little 3-dot vertical buttons. I don't even know I can't remember the official name for that. But anyway, yeah, so these are always a way for you to do some cleanup work. If you want to get rid of announcement altogether, that's the way to do it. But if you want to keep all the announcements for whatever reason, it's kind of handy because announcements can be really, involved in terms of what you create in them. If you put YouTube videos and things like that, announcements can be very elaborate, and so you may not want to just delete them. You can, maybe make use of that content some other way down the road. So, yeah.
You can't control what order the announcements are in.
No, it's always, notice you don't have the little move bar on here. Yeah, so announcements will always be in chronological order. Okay, now there are ways to filter, like let's say, if you're in a Canvas course as not necessarily the instructor, but maybe you're in as a student or a TA or whatever, and you're not the one controlling the announcements, you may not have read every single announcement, so you can filter on whether it's an unread announcement or not. So if you don't want to see the ones that you've already read, you can look at, all right, so I have no unread announcements, which would make sense since I created all of them, but students can do this as well. Right, so to limit the number of announcements visible, so let's say you want to always have on your home page the last 3 announcements that were posted. So if you go to the home page, or on my home page, so right now you can see I have no announcements listed here. All right, so, and it doesn't matter if it's a page, if it's the syllabus, if it's the activity stream, it doesn't matter which type of home page you have. You can have your announcements show up here by going into the settings. All right, and again, this is one of those things that you change in this little obscure little section down here. So at the very bottom of the settings page, and I'm just in the course details tab. So be careful when you're in the settings page. Be aware that there are various tabs up here that you could end up in. All right, so familiarize yourself with these tabs just so that you recognize what they look like. All right, but you want to be in the course details area, and then you want to scroll all the way to the bottom of that and choose more options. All right, and the very first option under more options is show recent announcements on course homepage. All right, you just check that button, and then underneath that, the drop down now activates so that you can choose exactly how many announcements you want visible. Okay, if I just want the last 2, or even just the last one, it's that. You decide. So I'll put 2. And then update, again, very important, make sure you hit the update course details button. If you just navigate away, it's not going to remember that setting.
So Meg,
Yep.
You got there by going.
So I went to my settings. Just go to plain settings, yeah. And then make sure you're in the course details tab.
Okay.
And then scroll all the way to the bottom of that. And that's that more options. It's a teeny tiny link, not obvious at all. So it's easy to overlook what's in there. All right, but again, make sure you update course details. Then when you go back to your home page, right at the very top, that's where you will see the most recent announcements. Yes?
You had apps up. You can integrate apps here?
Well, to a point. It's whatever apps are made available at the system level. So the system will have some apps that they've already tested, approved, and allow you to use. So the apps, so this is where you might be able to integrate in. So for example, if you like using, so let's click the install. So if you click the installed button, these are the ones that the CCSNH system has in place right now. All right, so this is really the only way you can add additional features into Canvas. All right, but again, it's only those apps that the system has already made available, okay? So the not installed ones, I don't remember what happens. Let me give this, like, let's do Films on Demand. I know there are some classes that actually, some courses here that use Films on Demand. We hit Add App. All right, so here, right, so if it's not installed, the only way you can bring these apps in is if you have some sort of authentication, like for this one, you need to have a consumer key and a shared secret. So you may, for some of these, you would have to have your own established account with whatever that app manufacturer has. So they're not just things that, even though it's listed here, it's not necessarily the case that you're going to be able to actually bring it into your Canvas course. So this is kind of the Wild West area of our Canvas installation right now. All right, there's a lot of experimentation going on with this, so it's a buyer beware kind of zone. All right, so use at your own risk. But yes, go ahead.
On announcements, 2 questions. The first is, if I do an announcement versus a page or a module, it's going to blast to everybody?
It will. It will. So now again, you have to remember that, let me go into student mode again, just so that, go to the home page, because I want you to see settings. So depending on student settings, in their notifications area, let me see, this is still going to attach to, yeah, there we go. So when students go to the account area, they can go in and change how notifications work on many things. All right, oh, it's not, all right, I thought I could do this here, but let me get out of here.
Okay.
Yeah, so anyway, yeah, so and again, I don't think that students can turn off email notifications for things like announcements.
That's my second question.
I'm pretty sure, I wanted to show you that for sure, but I can't because I'm not in as a student. But so that's the only thing. Now, what I do, just to cover all my bases, is there is a way for you to just set up an email list in your actual Outlook or whatever email program you're using. If you log into SIS and you go to your class list, you go into your roster on SIS, at the bottom of that roster page is an email class button. And what that will generate is a list of all the students' email addresses. So if you want to communicate, to all of your students via email, there's really no way to do that other than to post an announcement, and that should generate an email out to your students. But if you want to communicate with your students via email to their student email account, then what I recommend is get the email addresses from that email class button in the SIS roster, save that list of email addresses into your address book in Outlook or whatever, or even just save it in a text file. Maybe even save a dummy email message that you can use to generate an email quickly. There's lots of things you could do. Yeah.
Can't you also use the inbox?
You can. Yeah, and I usually recommend, but for those people who are like, I'm committed to sending email because I just have stressed it so much with my students that I want to make sure I use email as my main communication piece. Canvas itself is not really geared for, like in Blackboard where you had the ability to create an email right within Blackboard, you don't really have that same capability in Canvas. Canvas generates emails on occasion, but it tries to honor the settings of an individual user. So if there's a way for students, and it may not be there now, but it could be down the road, if there's a way for students to turn off email in their own notification settings, then you have no control over whether they're getting an email or not when you post an announcement, because that's under an individual user's control. So if you want to send email and know that it's going to every email in your class, then this is an alternate way to do it outside of Canvas. All right, grab the email addresses from your roster, save it however you want to do that, and then you can just generate an email. Now I recommend, if you're going to use that email list as is, make sure you put it in the blind carbon copy and not just blast it in the to all field. Use your VCC and then email it to yourself. That way you have a copy of the email. Students won't see everybody else's email address, they'll just see yours, and they can reply to you more easily that way. And that would be the better way to cover your bases if you want to be sure that they're getting an email as opposed. Now Linda mentioned something very, very important. The inbox is basically internal Canvas email. So as more and more students start to use the Canvas for Students app, they will more likely get a better notification system in place, because if they're using their Canvas app, that Canvas app religiously, it's going to be very prominent that the inbox has a new message for them. They're going to see that right within the Canvas app. So I like to use the internal Canvas inbox instead of email if I want to make sure that my communication is isolated to that course area. So for example, if I'm discussing a grade situation with a student, it may not be the best idea to do that through general email. You know, one of the FERPA policies is to, never put things like grades in a communication that might be intercepted by somebody, So email isn't the most secure way to have sort of more private conversations about things like grades or any other personal issue within the class. So you may want to institute a policy of using the inbox communication, because that is going to only stay within Canvas. It's not going to go out to email. It's not going to go, any of the contents of that message are going to stay just in that Canvas, in their Canvas inbox. All right. So that comes in very handy for that type of situation. All right. The student's asking about their grade and you want to send it to them. Again, a lot of people do it through email, but it's not a good policy in general. All right. All right, so we have a few more minutes. Is there anything else that people have burning, desired questions about?
There was a go-to, right? Like if you're in the middle of trying to set something up, there's...
Important, yeah, you should have been added to the Canvas for Faculty course. So you may want to, that's a great resource. So if it's really broken out well. Have you been into that course before?
Yes, I was in it for a little while too.
Yeah, so definitely have that. And also the Canvas Commons area, and also the CCS&H resource. These are other more global Canvas user areas that you may want to explore.
Okay.
There's a lot of good stuff in Canvas Commons, like test banks. If you're in a subject area, if you're teaching a subject area that has some fairly, common test banks and so forth, some of the sciences and English and literature classes, you may find some really good stuff in there. And it's just stuff that institutions that use Canvas are sharing up there.
Can I borrow one of you two?
We're wrapping up here,
Okay.
so yeah, definitely. Yeah, but definitely check out Canvas Commons. You may find that there's a lot of good stuff in there, definitely. All right. All right. So what we'll do is let's stop here. I mean, if there is anybody that wants to stick around and you're just too shy to ask a particular question, I'm happy to stick around for a little bit. I know they're starting the next session. I don't remember what time.
Much.
You're very welcome. My pleasure.
Are you talking about orientation?
Yeah, the orientation. Yeah. So if you're going to the orientation, that's starting up downstairs. Yes. Yes.
Quizzes.
Quizzes. Yes. Just a big, broad overview. Okay.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Let's go into. Let's go back to. So quizzes. Now, would you be likely to use a test bank of a sort, or are you building quiz questions from scratch? Probably.
From scratch, yeah.
Okay. So building from scratch. Let me go to the assignments area. Now, you'll see that there is a quizzes category. All right, so anything that is actually created as a quiz will show up in both places.
Yes.
It's going to end up as an assignment if you actually assign the quiz. So one strategy is to just build your quizzes and then assign them properly, make them into an actual assignment later, all right? So either way, it doesn't matter. There's no rhyme or reason to how you necessarily have to go about this.
Thank you, Mary.
Oh, you're welcome. Enjoy. All right, so to create a quiz. Now, again, you probably should, you should have a quiz, a category designated to quizzes.
That was it.
Yep. So just, now the interesting thing you need to know about building your quizzes, so once you add a quiz, your detail section looks like any other assignment for the most part. All right, and you could make a quiz that's actually that you put in a different assignment group. So let's say you'd like to just do a quick little survey, and it's not really something that you're going to put in your actual quiz category. I do this often. So you could have a different category for a particular quiz. So the quiz engine is really just to build an assignment that has that quiz-like feature, those quiz-like features. So, so this part really is no different than any of the other assignments that you build. Where you build the questions is on this tab right here. Some people just don't even see that, and you have to kind of point it out. All right, so what is a good idea is to think about, all right, first off, point values to individual quiz questions. If you have a certain group of quiz questions that are going to have 1 point value, like let's say there's 5 that are 5 points, your best idea is to think about that ahead of time and create question groups so that you can say, all right, this group of questions will have 5 points. This group of questions will have 10 points. So the more you can kind of plan that out ahead of time, so you can adjust this on the fly too, but I like to think this out ahead of time because it makes it build so much faster if you do. All right, so if I create a new question group, I'm going to call it. Now, what's also nice about question groups is if you do have a test bank that you're using, if you've brought that test bank in, then you can do randomly picked questions. That's the other nice thing about the quiz groups. If you've got like 100 multiple choice questions for a particular whatever it is, you can say, all right, this group of questions is going to randomly be made up of randomly selected questions from this test bank, and they're going to have this many points per question. So so if you build your quiz bank ahead of time, that makes building the actual quiz a lot easier. So if you do that, but if you're building them from scratch, you may just want to go with cancel that and just go back into edit mode here. All right. So if you just are going to build like 5 questions on this quiz, I'm going to just assign points individually, then that's where just build a new question. Okay? And then you have the standard editor. Depending on, there's lots of good question types. You have your standard multiple choice, true, false, fill in the blanks, etc. File upload question. This works way better if you've ever used this in Blackboard, it flakes out all the time. It works beautifully in Canvas, so just saying. All right, so you choose your choice. Like if I like to use the multiple answer one a lot, and what you have to watch out here is when you're setting up your answers. All right, so you'll notice that anything that's marked in green is going to be considered a correct answer. You can change if it's like let's say there are 2 individual answers that are correct here that they have to identify both. To change one of these, you have to indicate, whoops, wait a minute. I did that, not do that. All right, it's right here. So you have to click on the little arrow. Once you select a question, this little arrow lets you switch between it's a possible answer or it's actually a correct answer. So you put in your answer text. So watch for these little icon things. They kind of get overlooked sometimes, but they're kind of important. All right?
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome. Any other questions on it? Does that give you enough to get you going?
Yeah.
All right, awesome. All right, Linda, how about you? Any
Yeah,
other?
just checking on him.
Make sure he's good to go. Okay. Are you going down to the orientation?
You know, definitely.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So have fun. Enjoy.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
How are you doing?
Good, how you doing?
Good.
Yeah?
Yeah, binder you gave me was super helpful.
Okay, good.
Yeah, I'll get back to you.